Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first attempt at a virtual drill. For everybody that's on today, I really thank you and appreciate you guys for attending and taking your time to do this. Real quick before we get started, Zoom, if you make sure that you have your mics muted. One of this town hall, obviously, with the challenges we've been presented over the course of the last month and a half, we've had to overcome some of these things on communications and how we run our RSP drills and those types of things to meet with these new restrictions. So what I've done is we're trying to do this as a test if we have to do this at the end of the month in May as one of our drills. Before we get started, I wanted to see if I can introduce a team. So I'm going to have them have you guys move the cameras around if I can. All right, my name is Lieutenant Colonel Mike Mazeshki. I'm the Recruiting and Retention Battalion Commander for the Wyoming Army National Guard. My first sergeant for the RSP is First Sergeant Edmundo Herrera. And then my...
First Sergeant Herrera.
Command Sergeant Major Velocic.
All right, some of the discussion points that we're going to talk about. And if you guys see me writing things, if a lot of times I'm taking notes or things like that, so don't, I apologize if I kind of lose contact with you. What we're going to talk about is, like I said, I'm going to talk to you guys about the current status of the Wyoming Army National Guard on how we're moving forward. Then the first sergeant's going to talk a lot about the RSP and the training that's going on in Wyoming with our RSP drills, as well as training when we ship our the recruits off to basic training and AIT. And then the sergeant major, he's going to talk about some of the key points of staying prepared for basic training, what it means to serve, and etc. And then we'll have some closing remarks with you guys for any kind of questions. Another a point that I want to make: if you do have questions throughout the event, we'll give you an opportunity to ask them here. This event, although it is here from the time that we have this afternoon to do it, it doesn't end here. You can continue submitting questions throughout the month anytime you need at wyomingguard@gmail.com. Okay, again, that's wyomingguard@gmail.com. So the current status of the Wyoming Army National Guard, the Recruiting and Retention Battalion, and the RSP program. Right now at the Wyoming Army National Guard, the full-time staff is, as a lot of people who are in the government sector right now, we're doing some teleworking. So a lot of our stuff that we're doing is either virtual or conference calls, and a lot of the stuff we do is via our computers and email generated and those types of events. The RSP was with the recruiters supposed to be contacting the RSP on a daily basis. This allows us to get any issues that are happening, especially if they're financial ones, or the status of their health. And it's very critical for those who are short or be coming up on training to leave and attend basic training or AIT. The more proactive we are there, the better it is for us to get those guys shipped and off to training as fast as possible. With that said, one of the things I really want to do is take the time to thank, and I don't know how many families are on board right now, but I really would love to, want to thank the families and loved ones that have been supporting the Wyoming Military Department throughout, not just throughout this crisis, but just in general across the board. 2020 has been one of our most successful years that we've had, and it's come based off of a lot of the open-mindedness that has gone on throughout with all the families and businesses, and just the whole support. I came from Wyoming from Utah about, 11 years ago, and it's truly a unique state when it comes to honoring service, and I just can't thank you guys enough for what you've done with our support for our military members, and of course, obviously, letting your young adults join our military ranks. Expectations from your RSP. Again, Sergeant Major is going to go over this ad nauseum, probably discussing some of the expectations. The major thing with basic training, and we talk this as soon as these guys come in and enlist, there's a lot of angst when first recruits and applicants come to join the military. Physical fitness is key. If you're able to be physically fit, you're going to go through basic training in AIT without any kind of stress at all. All right, so the fitness levels are the key. The most important aspect of this is we do a lot of our shipping, and a lot of our soldiers go to training between May and July timeframe. As you know, we go to places like Georgia, Missouri, and South Carolina. A lot different than Wyoming, because in addition to the very high heat, you have a lot of humidity. So those are some of the challenges that we face. Again, so the fitness level is the biggest piece, and that's my main focus when it comes to the RSP and what you should be prepared for when you go to training. The other aspect of that is the resilience and confidence piece. Again, I think this falls in line with the physical training piece. Once we have that aspect of it taken care of, the confidence and the resilience to overcome everything else that happens at training, and really in generally life after training, will take care of itself. Okay, so I think I've done a good enough job with the introduction. A lot of this time is going to be on First Sergeant Herrera, because after all, this virtual drill right now, this virtual meeting that we're having right now, is a lot of the questions that are going on, because the majority of the changes right now are on the training pipeline. All right, so with that, I'll pass it over to First Sergeant Herrera.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So again, First Sergeant Herrera, I am your Recruit Sustainment Program First Sergeant. Some of the things that I want to discuss with both our warriors and our families today is COVID-19 and how we are addressing that and conducting our training safely, both in state and at the training bases across the nation. We're going to give you some updates and some changes to our shipping situation, and then talk about the training environments across the nation as well. So just like the commander said, we have a purpose for the Recruit Sustainment Program, and that's really based off of a MAP process, MAP. We want to make sure that our warriors are mentally prepared, administratively correct, and physically fit. That is very important as they enlist, and we are integrating them into the Army, but it also carries on to their units as well. Being mentally tough, administratively correct, and physically fit ensures that our warriors and our soldiers are prepared to deploy, whether it's stateside or overseas, to conduct their missions and take care of business. So that's really the purpose of the Recruit Sustainment Program. I'll tell you, I've had a lot of parents reach out to me in the past couple weeks, and one of the biggest questions that I'm sure that was on their mind and your minds are we shipping soldiers to training during this pandemic? And I'll tell you that we did have a 2-week pause. The Army basically put a pause on it. They said, hey, we need to take a look at this situation. How are we going to conduct business but do it safely while still training our soldiers and getting them back to their units? I'll tell you last week that the Army Chief of Staff, he made a decision to have the cadets at West Point graduate, and his quote was, "You can't telework your way into combat." So same thing with the Recruit Sustainment Program and the Army National Guard as a whole. We have to assume some risk. We need to make those decisions as leaders, and we still have to train our soldiers and get them back to their units, so that way we are ready for when duty calls. So we decided to come up with the RSP Town Hall today to address some of these changes, to gather some questions, and really let you guys know what the way ahead is for drill and shipping. One thing that we're going to do here today is answer a couple questions, but we are going to have drill at the end of the month on the 30th and the 31st. During that time, we are going to allow soldiers to make the decision based off of whether they are going to attend in person for drill or they will attend digitally with their recruiters and with us here again. All of those drills that will be taking place across the state and various locations will all be conducted under CDC guidelines. So we will be splitting up groups, especially because we're coming up on summer surge where we're sending about 170 soldiers to training across the nation. So this will allow that face-to-face time with those soldiers, with the families, to answer questions in person. And like I said, if you want to conduct that drill virtually and ask on this platform, then you are welcome to. So all soldiers will be paid. We will ensure that you get the information that you need and that we set our soldiers up for success to head to training. So one of the issues that was discussed was the safety portion of this, okay? How do we meet CDC guidelines? What precautions can we take to make sure that our soldiers are healthy and prepared to head to training? So we have both, we have two 14-day quarantine periods that are basically taking place. So our soldiers that are shipping to training, we've asked them to self-quarantine at home 15 days prior to shipping to training, okay? During that time frame, we have our recruiters calling them daily, and they're asking them the basic screening questions that any other medical staff would ask. Do you have a fever? Have you been around anybody that, has COVID or tested positive for COVID? So we're asking them to be resilient in that fashion and self-quarantine in their home of records prior to shipping to the military entrance processing station and heading to training from there. Now, once upon showing up to their training site, they're actually going to be going through a reception battalion, okay? In this reception battalion, they're going to be tested for COVID-19 upon arrival, and then they're going to enter a 2-week controlled monitoring process. So not really a quarantine, but our soldiers are going to be in a platoon-size element basically for the first 2 weeks of basic combat training. During this time, they'll be in classrooms, they'll be following the CDC guidelines and conducting training, and they're going to have quite a bit of oversight from the drill sergeants and the staff there to make sure all social distancing rules apply, that they're asking the same questions and monitoring them daily, that they're segregating the living space to give everybody, that 6 feet plus. But also, one thing that they're doing is we got the drill sergeants there that are going to be on 14-day rotations. And the reason they did that is they don't want, an outbreak to happen and one drill sergeant, all the drill sergeants, test positive for COVID-19 and then training stops across the board. So they are rotating staff in and out, making sure that if something does happen, they can still continue on with training. So 2 weeks of controlled monitoring for their first 2 weeks of basic training. Once they are done with that, they will gather the rest of their equipment and they'll actually head to a basic training company. That's the portion where they'll be out doing their ruck marches, more of the weapons and hands-on training. One thing that they did cut from the agenda was combatives training, or hand-to-hand combat, basically. They cut that portion out just to keep the soldiers, more social distance and to keep that risk mitigated. So that's one thing that was taken away from the training schedule. So there's constant changes coming up all the time. I think I deal with a few daily that we have to update our recruiters and our staff with. One thing that I do have to let my Phase 2 soldiers know today, and our Phase 2 soldiers, if you don't understand, you are the soldiers that have already attended basic combat training, and you've reported back to the state awaiting to go to advanced individual training. Your ship dates right now are probably going to adjust, and you'll be shipping 2 to 7 days earlier. The reason that is because there is no reception battalion at your advanced individual training, so we got to have you guys do a 14-day controlled monitoring environment there before the start date of your advanced individual training. So I should have an official answer today or tomorrow. Once we get that guidance and I know what days, I think there's 39 of you that are Phase 2. Once I get the dates that you'll be shipping, we'll ensure that that gets to your recruiter and to you, so that way you can let your families, employers, and loved ones know when you'll be heading back to training. A lot of questions that I received from families as well was, what's the way ahead on graduation? Should we buy tickets? Should we get hotel rooms? What's the plan? So I'll tell you right now, there is nobody allowed on post. They are doing a lot of the graduations virtually. So I've already passed out a lot of that information to the recruiters. Most of you out there have Facebook, so if you jump onto Facebook and you look up those respective training sites, whether it's Fort Sill, Fort Jackson, go there, like the page. They're posting a lot of those graduations virtually, so you can see those soldiers graduate. Also, those soldiers are sending a lot of information out from the training base, so they'll be calling you, they'll be mailing you, letting you know if things do open up, what the process is, and then obviously if I have information, I'll be disseminating that as necessary. So let's talk about one other thing with safety. Right now, the commander and I, Colonel Pozeski, we have to go through basically a decision matrix while we're selecting soldiers to go to training. Thus far, we've had 7 soldiers canceled that we've been able to take care of, but the Army has told us that they need to reduce the size of these training bases and who we're sending by up to 50%. So we're planning everything about 2 weeks ahead of time, and we're saying, here's all our soldiers that are healthy, this is where they're going, and we're sending a finalized roster to National Guard Bureau. About a week and a half prior to their ship date, we're getting an official roster back, and they're letting us know, hey, thumbs up or thumbs down, these are the guys that can or can't go to training. So I'll tell you, there is going to be instances where, you know, a week prior to you shipping to training, we might tell you to stand down and that we're going to have to find you a new ship date. There are some issues that happen with that, okay? First thing is, if a lot of you out there that receive bonus or incentives, you're going to read through your addendum. And you can see if you failed to ship to training or if something was canceled, that could affect that or keep you from getting that incentive. National Guard Bureau, we've identified that, and there is an exceptional policy they worked on, but basically, just keep in your mind that your incentives will not be affected. Another thing that we need to discuss is every soldier that enlists, the date that they enlist, they have 24 months to complete basic combat training and advanced individual training. Well, now with this pandemic going on, canceled training seats and not being able to just send someone whenever we'd like, that's going to cause issues, because if they're not qualified within 24 months, the federal law is I have to discharge them. We have to separate them. So right now we have a verbal that the Secretary of Defense is going to add an additional 12 months to that training period, okay? So those guys and gals that are getting close to those 24 months, just keep in mind, because of COVID-19, the Secretary of Defense is going to allow us some extra time to get you to training and to get you qualified and not to have to worry about being discharged or separated from service. Colonel Pozeski already gave you guys the email address to send questions to, but I'll let you know my phone is on 24/7. A lot of parents know that, soldiers know that. You can text me, you can call me. My phone's always right next to me, okay? For you guys out there on Facebook and the other platforms that we're using today, you'll see my cell phone number on there, but please do not hesitate at any time if you have questions, comments, concerns as we go through this. One thing I want you to keep in mind as well is we will be holding drill virtually 30 and 31 May. Those questions that are for the good of the group, send them out. I'm also going to put together an FAQ, or a frequently asked questions guide, and we'll be going through that and answering a lot of those questions some you might have thought of and some you might not have thought of. One thing we're going to do as well is I'm going to have one of my drill sergeants here, Sergeant First Class Thompson, who's hot off the trail from being a drill sergeant, and he's going to be our subject matter expert on the panel, helping answer some of those questions about the training environment, what to expect, both as a soldier and as a family member or loved one. So, one thing I'd like to brief as well is the Wyoming Army National Guard started a gold phase about 8 months ago. And what that is we have our recruit sustainment program, different phases on colors of where soldiers are at in their training pipeline. So we got red, white, blue phase, a couple others in there for split trainers, but then we have a gold phase. And the gold phase is the culminating event of when we have our RSP warriors complete training and report back to the state. The reason we started that is we assist our units with some of the administrative portions and medical portions prior to those soldiers reporting to their unit, making sure that they're administratively correct, physically fit, and they're ready to deploy as soon as they arrive to their units. I'd like to let the loved ones out there and the families know when they receive that information of when they'll be attending from their recruiter. I highly encourage that if it's open at the time that you attend that. That is really us thanking them for completing training. We have state leadership there thanking both those soldiers and you as the family members and loved ones. So please, if you can make it to those events, I highly encourage you to. One other thing that I'd like to say is just thank you to everybody out there. Just like Colonel Pozeski said, we definitely appreciate the support, especially here in Wyoming. We're a very tight-knit group. We're like a family. And really, thank you to those soldiers out there that, made the decision to raise your right hand to serve this, community, state, and country, especially during this pandemic. I don't know how many pictures I've seen of, these young men and women at the military entrance processing station wearing their masks, raising their right hands. It's some crazy times, and for you to have, that mental fortitude and the motivation to enlist and do something better for yourself, for your country and community is definitely appreciated. And with that said, I'll be passing off to Command Sergeant Major Velasic. Thank you.
Thank you, First Sergeant. Good afternoon, everyone. And the first thing I'd like to do is commend and thank everyone, each and every one of you out there for making the decision to serve your community, state of Wyoming, and the nation. You've made a decision that less than half of 1% have made of people your age. So I commend you for that. Thank you very much. I think it'll be very rewarding. I'd like to talk about setting yourself up for success for a basic training. You need to keep yourself mentally prepared, especially during this time of uncertainty, and to keep yourself in the best shape that you can be. When I say prepare yourself mentally, I believe you've all got the blue book. Make sure you're looking at that. Ask questions. There are no dumb questions. You haven't been there before. There's a lot of people who have gone before you, have completed it before you. Don't be afraid to ask those questions. If you're uncertain of something, please ask. Because as you get closer to your ship date, the anxiety is going to be a little higher. So we want to put you at ease as much as that we can. We've talked about physically preparing yourself. The better shape you're in when you go to basic training, the easier it's going to be for you. So please get out there, work on your push-ups, sit-ups, and your aerobic wherever you can, okay? One of the greatest accomplishments in your life will be completing initial active duty training. It will provide you memories for a lifetime. In about 2 weeks, I was supposed to celebrate my 40th reunion of graduating from high school. It was canceled. I go back every year and we kind of talk about some things, and I've kind of forgotten about a lot of things over the years that I've done with my classmates, but one thing I haven't forgotten is basic training from 31 years ago. I still remember the drill sergeants' faces, what I did during basic training, and I still enjoy those memories and talking about those things. So go through it, remember it, and you'll have it for a lifetime. The only way you can fail basic training is if you quit on yourself. Okay, the drill sergeants are there to help you. The first couple of weeks, it's going to be tough. You're going to be in the classroom a lot. You're going to be questioning yourself, maybe a little buyer's remorse. Why did I do this? Remember what you joined for. Okay, the first 2 weeks, you're in the classroom, goes a little slow, but as soon as you get out of the classroom, you're out on the ranges, time goes by a lot quicker. Okay, before you know it, you're 10 foot tall, bulletproof at basic training graduation, and there's no feeling like that in the world. So just remember that, especially when you're at reception station. Reception station, you'll go there, they'll call formation to tell you when the next formation is. Time will go by slow. Just remember you're getting paid for that, and the reasons that you did join, for the job skill, for the college tuition, or whatever. So keep yourself in the right frame of mind, especially during those first couple weeks. You're going to get a little homesick. You're going to be with people from 50 states, 4 territories. You're going to find out mom and dad really aren't that bad of people. Okay, I encourage you all to write home as much as possible, and if you are able to ever use your cell phone, to make those calls home. And you're going to find out really the only thing they're going to tell you about is the weather and Billy Bob got in trouble and those kind of things. So even though you're homesick, you're really not missing anything. So write letters and use the phone when you can. One thing you don't want to do is drop out of basic training, because if you quit on yourself and you come home, you're going to have to explain to your friends and family why you dropped out. And that's something that'll follow you for the rest of your life. Don't do that, people. Millions of people before you have gone through basic training and completed it. I've been in the military for 31 years. I've talked to several people who have dropped out, and it's been one of their biggest regrets. Either that or they had blamed it on the military for some reason and didn't take responsibility for themselves not completing it. So it's 9-10 weeks. It's something that you can all complete. Last thing I want to talk about is, let's take a look here. Okay, last thing I want to talk about is I expect each and every one of you to complete basic training. I think that you made a commitment. I hope that you'll stick with that commitment, and I expect a lot of you to come home as honor graduates. Wyoming does a great job with their RSP soldiers, and we're going to try to set you up for success as much as we can. When I went to basic training, I was with regular Army soldiers and reserve soldiers that didn't get the training that we get. So we're going to set you up for success. Go down there, do your best, and try to be honor grad, try to make that your goal. With that being said, I think we're going to open it up for questions, sir.
First question we had, when you get to basic training, what is the amount of time you have to wait before or for processing? And does that include the 2-week monitoring when you get to basic training?
All right, I'm going to pass that one to First Sergeant.
Okay, so I have in hand right here the new model for the two-week controlled monitoring and 8-week training pipeline. Okay, so for right now, they actually bumped down the time at the reception battalion. The initial screening and time that you'll be spending at the reception battalion is scheduled for 2 days right now. And that's basically a reduced onboarding process to give you minimal equipment, your immunizations, blood draw. It looks like the moment of truth, a behavioral health screening, and then you go right into your controlled monitoring for 14 days. So right now, reception battalion, you will be there for 2 days, which is less than normal.
Next one was, what if COVID-19 pushes training dates beyond the MRD for incoming freshmen to University of Wyoming?
So we've looked at that already, and we're monitoring all our soldiers. So once the University of Wyoming, went virtual, we had a lot of soldiers that we've enlisted around the country head back home, and that's something that remains in the back of our mind. We don't want to keep our soldiers from attending college or keeping them academically aligned for scholarships, and especially ROTC, where a lot of our soldiers are at. So that's one reason why we've asked National Guard Bureau to go to the Secretary of Defense and ask for those additional 12 months as an exception of policy. So when we pull these training dates, if somebody's canceled, that's something we're going to look at. Right now, with everybody that's scheduled, they'll be good. This 2 + 8 week model is going to keep them academically aligned for their MRD. But say somebody's canceled and I can't ship them to training towards the end of the summer. Well, that's a case that we're going to extend it and ship them to training that next summer, since we have that additional 12 months and making sure that they are academically aligned and can attend college and come home on their mandatory return date.
Let me expand. I'm going to expand just a little bit on that one, just to make it a little bit more clear. So the MRD, like First Sergeant said, we monitor and see when you're coming back. If something happens at training, and this has happened maybe once or twice, just in 2019, where a graduation was like pushed to the right, and they were going to graduate like 4 days later or 1 week later. And then, what happens is we have National Guard liaisons at all of the training sites. So they let that National Guard liaison know. We immediately find out, and in most instances, all instances thus far has been, all the training requirements are usually done. What it is they're just doing some timing based off of other agenda things that are going on. Yeah, I remember a lot of these people are on active duty, so they don't have an MRD. They just go from one training to another to their duty station when they're done. They're in the Army full-time 4 years. When something like that happens, if there's a few day gap or things like that, all we do is it's called a tag recall. The Adjutant General signs a memorandum. We send it up, and they come back through there. And if their training requirements, they're typically always the training requirements are done. So therefore, all they don't do is they don't graduate their AIT, and I don't think we've ever had it happen for basic training. So I'm not expecting it to happen for basic training because we timed that very well. But if for some reason, if there was some kind of like a time gap with AIT, and we need you to come back and get to school, we will get you back to school with the tag release letter. If something happens to where we sent you off and there's like a 2 or 3 week gap, that's something on our end that we didn't factor in properly. So I don't expect any of that to happen.
Sir, if I could add to that also. If for some reason that you weren't able to come back for the semester, or say you choose to miss a semester, I want you to understand that any military training that you do go through, you can get some college credit for. You'll get what's called a joint service transcript, and you can turn that into the registrar's office at the college, and you'll be able to get some college credits that way. I also want to tell you about 2 programs called Dantes and CLEP tests. As a member of the military, those tests are free, and what you can do is test out of those classes and get the college credit also. As a civilian, it costs $80 to $100. For yourselves, it's free. So I do encourage you to ask some questions more about Dantes and CLEP tests, and then to remember your joint services transcript that will help you get college credit if you do miss a semester or something like that.
The next question is, how will you handle drill for RSP warriors enlisted in Wyoming but living outside the state?
So just like we discussed, I know that we have a lot of students that had to go back home all around the country, and that's something that we planned. So we do have a plan for virtual drills. Our main focus for May drill is going to be, that's typically our family drill. So we're answering a lot of questions about basic combat training, initial active duty training, and setting you guys up to head down range to get that completed. Any soldier that is not in place, if travel restrictions are lifted and if CDC guidelines change, I always have the freedom to discuss with other state and territories recruit sustainment programs for you to attend training in person. But we also have a plan in place for you guys to drill virtually. So you guys that are out there and parents that are out there, keep in mind that either way, your service member will be getting paid, and we'll have a plan to train them and staying within the guidelines of RSP, mentally prepared, administratively correct, and physically fit.
And then I'll add to this one as well. Hey, look, a lot of our training for the RSP, they're called the stream modules, and they're very easy to conduct virtually. First Sergeant does a fantastic job of figuring that piece out. The primary function when you're attending RSP drill is for the recruiters to get eyes on the soldier. A lot of physical training goes on, a lot of drill and ceremony goes on. Those are really the aspects of like the RSP where in person really benefits. So obviously you can take care of half of that. Especially now it's getting warmer. The requirement to go to a gym, and most gyms aren't even open, but the requirement to go to a gym kind of like, it doesn't have to be there. You can train outside. So the physical fitness piece of that can be handled at your level. And I've talked to the First Sergeant about trying to figure out some kind of format to where, it's an honor system, but we make sure that we are part of that virtual drill time includes physical fitness, where we are, some kind of documentation on the training regimen that's being done by the soldier. That's the first aspect of it. And again, like the drill and ceremony, hey guys, I think so much has gone on with like YouTube and things like that right now that if the drill and ceremony, those aspects of things that you want to look at, you can almost Google search any of those things, and still get there. So the two biggest functions of coming to a drill really can be taken care of virtually or via, like I said, doing it on your own or going on and looking at it on a video. Obviously, a face-to-face interaction, especially in states like a state like Wyoming, we are a handshake state. That's just the way it is. This is what happens when you have a very large state but very small communities. You just get to know everybody, and that's the culture of our state. It's probably the greatest asset of our state is that, despite how big we are, we still are very close-knit, So like I said, the First Sergeant said he's got those things taken care of as far as like the virtual drill and how to do it from out of state. But those physical fitness requirements and things like that, if you can take care of those on your own, we'll still be able to get to success.
I'd like to take everyone's fear away right now. Everyone that's listening to me right now knows more than I did when I went to basic training. I joined on a Friday afternoon. And Monday, I was at Fort Benning, Georgia, so I had the weekend to basically pack. I didn't know the phonetic alphabet. I didn't know the rank structure. I didn't know how to wear, the uniform, boots, any of that stuff. So use the tools that are out there. Commander brought up a great thing on YouTube, the drill and ceremony. And if you open up that blue book and look at those things I just talked about, the phonetic alphabet, the rank structure, those kind of stuff is all in there. So get yourself mentally prepared and by looking at that stuff.
All right, 2 more questions. Are soldiers with scheduled ship dates in June still shipping on time?
Yes, right now soldiers with scheduled ship dates in June and every month are shipping on time. The only caveat to that is the quarantine process prior to. In order to ship on time, we need you guys to be responsible, just like our recruiters are going to be, to ensure that you guys are meeting those requirements of self-quarantining and answering those questions daily. We send all these shippers and applicants to the military entrance processing station, signed, validating everything was done correctly. So the only thing really right now that can affect your ship date is if you do not follow those guidelines and break those, you will not ship. The other thing is if the National Guard Bureau comes back and because of the 50% capacity at those training bases, we could have soldiers get cut. Like I said, we've only had onesie-twosies of those so far, but right now everybody is shipping on time. I'll say again that our Phase 2 shippers that have already completed basic combat training, be prepared to ship a little bit sooner. I can't give you the exact time frames, but as I said before, I should have those dates either this afternoon or by the latest close of business tomorrow.
Just real quick, can you talk the attestation form and the specifics when it comes to the work and things like that when you talk the self-quarantine, just to clarify that a bit?
Absolutely. So with that 14-day quarantine, there's an attestation form that both the soldier and the recruiter have to fill out, okay? So they're asking them questions every day. Hey, are you social distancing? Are you following CDC guidelines? Okay, so although we're asking you to self-quarantine, it doesn't mean lock yourself in the room, okay? You're still allowed to interact with your family. If you need to go to work and you could be within those guidelines, then do so, but do it so safely. As long as you're following those guidelines, then you will meet the intent of the attestation form that you will be required to fill out prior to shipping to training. So just be smart about it. I know one thing is there's a lot of young men and women out there. You want to see your friends. You want to get together before you head to training. It's tough times right now, okay, during this pandemic. Don't ruin your ship date. Don't ruin your future because you're not out there doing the right thing, okay? And if you guys have specific questions or you have something coming up, definitely get with your recruiters or parents and soldiers. You always have my phone number as well. If you have a situation or have questions about it, then I'm always available to answer those.
All right, last question from social media. If there is any other questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. Email us at wyomingguard@gmail.com and we'll get those answered, or we'll go reply on your comments in here. So the last question. For soldiers that have accepted a later training date than they initially wanted, when will the command look at renos for those soldiers and get an earlier ship date?
Okay, so I'll let you guys know. If you want to ship to training sooner, then send the request up through your recruiter to me. I'll tell you, go through your recruiters so they're tracking and they're on board with it. When you send that request up and you want to ship to training sooner, keep in mind that, I could get a ship date for 14 days from now, which means you have to start your quarantine right away. So I've pulled some training for soldiers that were renegotiated, and really they have shipped within a couple weeks. So if you do want to ship to training sooner, that's an option for every soldier, and it always has been despite of COVID-19 and this pandemic. Send your request up through your recruiter. Let them know what the earliest ship date that you can have. So if it's June 5th. Hey, I can leave June 5th or after as soon as possible. So when you send your request up, send that information with them. I will push that up to, it's called the TMPT, that's a Training Management Pipeline Team at National Guard Bureau. They have access to look at all the training bases, all the seats in the country, and see what's available. The other thing is, you might throw in a request today and say you're a 13 Fox is your MOS, and you want to ship in June, but there's no available training till August. Well, you got to keep in mind, we have soldiers that get hurt, they get in trouble, they don't graduate from high school, a lot of different reasons why they can't ship to training. Well, when that happens, that training seat opens up, and then when it's visible to my TMPT team, they will let me know, hey, you know, if you have this soldier that still wants this seat or wants to take it, it's available. So absolutely, please get in your training request if you want to go sooner. We love that because it gets you downrange sooner and it gets you back to your units and it keeps you out of the RSP for so long. So if you want to get training done, definitely send in your request and get it knocked out.
I just want to reiterate what the first sergeant said. With soldiers from 50 states, 4 territories, there's always someone that's going to get themselves in trouble or get hurt medically, or it's called empathy. It just doesn't want to go. So if you want those ship dates, get your requests in, and we'll be watching for them. National Guard Bureau likes us when we move those training ship dates forward until left. And like First Sergeant said, it's less time for you in RSP. It gets your training done quicker and gets you back to school or whatever your work or whatever. So, yeah, we can definitely get you a sooner ship date, but you need to get that request in.
First, will you explain to them, I know we talked, like if they want to re-know, it could be 2 weeks from now. Since we've been following the quarantine guidelines since I think the last week of March, can you let us know, do they have to still wait the 14 days? But like, so for example, if somebody wants to ship early and there's a seat available 2 days from now, because we've already been doing this daily, can they ship 2 days from now?
Absolutely. So this just happened a couple weeks ago, sir. I had a soldier that was canceled due to COVID-19 and had their ship date moved till January of 2021. Threw in a request to get an earlier ship date, and literally that was on, I believe, a Wednesday or a Thursday, and they could have shipped her on Monday, and they did. So as long as our recruiters are doing the right things and taking care of those soldiers, answering the questions, and you yourselves out there as warriors and soldiers are practicing CDC guidelines and staying within that scope of what they're requesting, then yes, National Guard Bureau has allowed us to do that, and we signed the paperwork saying that you guys have followed those guidelines. So don't think, hey, I need to pick a ship date 14 days from now. Okay, if you're following those guidelines that is required based off of that attestation form, then absolutely, we could ship you next week as long as you're doing the right things. I think that's all we have for questions. Just closing remarks now.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like it's back to me to close this out. Hey, look, I really appreciate everybody's time for attendance here today. Hopefully this was a success. Please provide the feedback to our marketing team again at wyomingguard@gmail.com. Look, I understand there's like sometimes we don't want to ask the questions. Don't let questions linger. There's so many times where when we wait and then it's an emergency, we're trying to make a whole bunch of contacts. The other piece to it is some of these things that come up, we may not think of 100% of everything, and many times it affects national level policies. You know, we had a female who is going to join, but she needed an age waiver, and she lived with her grandmother or her mother, who was elderly. So they were really uncomfortable with shipping. Well, my sergeant major told me that, and because what happens is when the waiver is approved, it's only good for 90 days. Well, I went over and I asked, I said, hey, you know, with these things going on, can we double that number of days? Now, this didn't end up just affecting this one individual. It now affects everybody in the country. That is now the policy across the country. So those simple questions like that may seem trivial, or you may not want to ask them, you don't really know how big they are. The other piece here, you know, we've talked, our RSP, the first sergeant, along with the recruiters, we have been very, very proactive. I think there's a couple of ship dates that we soldiers that we weren't able to ship was more due to when they lived in like Colorado. So because Colorado was shut down and they lived in Colorado, they couldn't ship. So those things that have happened where people aren't shipping really hasn't been a limitation of what we haven't done. We're generally the first people in to send our shipper tracker. We're generally working with the contractors in Florida and Arlington, Virginia on a daily basis. Many times we're doing that on a late Friday. We're doing it on a Saturday. I will throw the kudos out to those contractors that are working the weekends. There's a lot going on. And our RSP First Sergeant, our Command Sergeant Major, the staff, the recruiters, we're not working Monday through Friday from a certain set hours. What we're trying to do is make sure we have as much success for the soldier as possible. We're there for you guys and your families. So again, don't let questions linger. First Sergeant talked about the May drill and the month May drill on how we're doing virtual or whether or not you're going to come in with your family. I think you got some kind of a roster that's going to be happening. There's a roster that we're going to see how that goes. I really like to take advantage of the in-person because that's really when myself and the Sergeant Major get to meet a lot of the families and are able to really talk a lot of the benefits. A lot of times the warriors are over there, and I don't know how many families I have on today, but they talk about they talk about their bonus, they talk about all their training, and some of those other things that can benefit you either financially or medical insurance or those types of things are just unknown by a lot of the families. So I think I may need to do something where I push out some kind of information as far as that goes if this virtual drill doesn't happen to discuss some of those benefits. One thing I understand, I don't know, when soldiers go to training, during the time that they are at training, they are 100% covered on insurance. Okay, so for families that are on or for soldiers that are on, let your parents know this. I don't know how that affects the insurance policies, but make sure that they understand that so that you're able to talk it with those and then see if you can help out. I mean, if you can ease the burden of a few $100s a month on monthly premiums while you're at training, fantastic. And when you come back, obviously, health insurance that's afforded to us. I'm just going to do a real quick plug for the health insurance because I don't know, like I said, how many families are on right now. If you just go to Google and punch in TRICARE Reserve Select, once you get on that website, explore that website and look at the health benefits and the medical insurance that's afforded to people who are in the military. Look at the costs, look at the deductibles, and look at those aspects of it. And if you don't really understand it, shoot the questions out to our marketing so we can answer those questions. This is an area where I think it's underutilized until the soldiers come back, they finish college, get off their parents' insurance plan, and all of a sudden have to fend for themselves. But there's no reason to not digress and pay the premiums of the TRICARE Reserve Select because of the amount of how much it costs versus what you spend on deductibles and co-pays, etc. So I urge you guys to look for that. And I'm going to leave you with this. The training environment is probably the safest environment because you got to remember, every single post has one of the state-of-the-art hospital. The military department, DOD, Department of Defense, does not go without required medical supplies. They don't go without ventilators. They don't go without PPE. The other aspect of it is the training environment is, again, with a lot of young, healthy individuals that are together, so a lot of resilience on that aspect. And finally, there are delays in shipping and some of the unknowns since March 18th, right in that area, that have happened. There is a lot of options for me as a commander to resolve issues at my level between the first sergeant and myself. I can resolve a lot of those. If I don't know about your financial hardships, it's very difficult for me to help you. There is no reason that anybody that was scheduled to go to training, anybody that had any employment issues, those aspects, none of those things should be a hindrance for anybody in the Wyoming Army National Guard. We can generally figure out a way on how, I'm not going to say that we can 100% ease your burden, but we can figure out a way to at least mitigate it so it's not as hard as what it should be. Again, I ask for you before in closing to whatever questions you have, email them to WyomingGuard@gmail.com. And really, another thing I would really like is some feedback on the information that you guys received today and the format of this meeting. That would be fantastic for my marketing team to better improve our processes and these events and the questions that you guys have. Thank you again for everything that you guys do. Hopefully, like I said, we look forward to seeing you guys very soon, face to face. Good afternoon.